Well, the day has finally arrived when TVS has launched its first adventure motorcycle in India. This is the TVS Apache RTX, and we are here in beautiful Shimla riding this bike on the tarmac through trails and through rocky surfaces. And as you can see from the state of my riding jacket, we've been having a lot of fun. Now, TVS may have taken the time to come up with the RTX, but they have done their homework quite thoroughly. The bike packs a lot, whether it's design, features, and the way it rides, while also being priced very competitively. So, let's begin by assessing the bike with the way it looks. The design of the bike is actually quite interesting and I quite like it. Don't go by the picture because in the flesh it actually looks quite good. To me, some of the design highlights include the twin LED headlights over there. These are quite bright and if we're riding in the dark, and you could see quite a lot further ahead. So pretty good throw and spread as well. So it's quite functional and not just aesthetic. Then if you look at the front fairing, it's very nicely integrated with this fuel tank over here that looks big and chunky. So when you're seated on the bike, it actually gives you this big bike feel. And then as purposeful as an ADV should be, you have a very slender rear over here and a tail light over here that's very neatly integrated but quite reminiscent of what we've seen. The position rather is very reminiscent of what we've seen on a BMW GS 310. So I think overall the design is quite appealing. I feel it looks quite good, very distinct, and I quite like the colors as well. So this is something that TVS has got quite right. In fact, the proportions of the bike are also quite spot on. It has good road presence, and people who want that will appreciate this aspect about the Apache RTX. As for the quality levels, where it's typically TVS, you have the same switchgear that you find in the RTR models, the RTR 310 or the RR 310. If you look at the quality of the handlebar, the way the plastics have been neatly screwed together over here. I like the way this whole TFT display has been fitted quite neatly in the front end. There are no loose cablings or wirings over here, so great attention to detail is what you can see. If you look at the paint finish, if you look at the quality of the top box rack over here, all of that is very nice and very typical of TVS, so I have no cause for complaint yet. And now let's check out the riding position of the bike. Out of the ergonomics of the bike are actually very good. The seat is very spacious, the handlebars are nice and easy reach. It feels like a big motorcycle over here because of this wide handlebar and this big tank. So it feels like a nice and solid motorcycle to be out touring on. I'm 5 feet and 11 inches, and as you can see, there's a lot of room for me in the saddle. There's a lot of room for the pillion as well. So overall, I think the ergonomics are quite good if you want to go commuting or even traveling over long distances. As for the standing up commutes now, this is more of a road biased ADV. So the ergonomics are, well, while riding off-road, as you can see, there is decent purchase, but not a lot. And the handlebar though is at a pretty good position for my height, so I don't have to get risers to ride this motorcycle. But overall the ergonomics are good, but it isn't as off-road friendly, say, when you're riding a KTM 250 Adventure. Well, let's get to the heart of the matter now, and that's the engine. Now, a lot of people wonder that is this engine as vibey as the other 310 engines in the Apache fold? Well, it isn't the case. It is a lot more refined. Yes, there is a little bit of buzz in the handlebar, in the peg, as well as the tank, but it never gets to a bothersome level at all. Now, we kept the RPMs hovering between mid to even the top. And yes, there is a little bit of buzz, but it is not bad at all. And you have to remember that a lot of single cylinder engines will be vibey. You could take the example of a KTM 250 Adventure, for example. Even that's a little vibey. So yes, there will be a little bit of vibration, but it is not as bothersome at all. In fact, it sounds quite like the other Apache engines in terms of the intake howl, and the exhaust note is also quite addictive. So it feels good, it feels nice, and feels like a nice and responsive engine. In fact, the tractability is also very, very impressive. Through the hills over here, we've been riding in third gear at say 28 to 30 kilometers per hour, and I don't need to downshift at all. So this is going to be a great commuter as well if you're into relaxed and lazy riding. And if you want to get up to speeds, well, it does pack decent performance.
This engine has a rather peaky nature. A look at the spec sheet tells you that the peak power and torque arrives high in the rev range, which means you'll have to rev this engine hard if you want to extract performance. Power delivery, in fact, is linear in the bottom half of the rev range. However, get past 5000 RPM and the bike feels more alive with a surge in acceleration. If you want to ride this bike in a sporty manner, you'll have to keep the revs in the upper half of the range. Now, we rode the bike in all the modes and the difference in the engine characteristics and the throttle response is quite notable. For the most part, however, I stuck to Tour and Rally. Tour when I was riding on the road and Rally when we were riding off-road, and the throttle response was quite handy in both the Tour as well as the Rally modes when we were riding on the road and off-road. So the riding modes are quite tailored and suited and calibrated rather very well as per the riding conditions.
We haven't ridden this motorcycle on the highway to check out its touring capabilities, and that's why I'm really interested to see how this engine performs. What is the engine RPM like in 6th gear at 100 or 120? That is something that you need to keep an eye out for. And we also need to check what are the vibration levels at those cruising speeds. So that is something that we will test when we are back home in Mumbai. And now let me quickly tell you what this engine sounds like. This is at idle. It sounds a little more bassy, more throaty compared to the 310s, and that I think is a good job that TVS has done in terms of setting up the exhaust note to be a little more distinct than the other 310 motorcycles that it's got.
What I also appreciated is the safety net of traction control that works seamlessly in the background. Moving on to the chassis, and TVS has done a great job with setting it up. There's plenty of grip and feedback, which makes it a joy to chuck this bike around corners.
Let's talk about the road first of all. Riding around the twisties in Shimla over here, the roads were quite broken in places and some places were smooth. So through all that varying tarmac, the bike feels very planted. The suspension actually does a superb job of absorbing a lot of those bumps and potholes and a lot of steps in the road very, very well. It rounds off all of those imperfections very, very well. So that's a great thing. At the same time, flickability is beautiful. It feels very light at the front. Despite a 19-inch wheel, it doesn't require a lot of steering effort to get the bike turned from, say, left to right through a chicane. So it feels nice, natural and flowing. So no cause for complaints on the road. When you're riding off-road also, I think the suspension setup is very, very good. If you can, you should stretch and get your hands on the BTO kit that gives you adjustability. This is the bike that we've been riding with front adjustable suspension, and that makes a big difference. There were some sections where I didn't need to even stand and ride over some of the rocky surfaces. I could just sit and ride and I had no problems whatsoever. So that goes to show the kind of effort that TVS has put into tuning the suspension, and I think they've done a very, very good job with that. As for the braking, well, it's quite confidence inspiring. There's a lot of bite from the front end, great progression, but the rear feels a little too soft in my opinion.
The features on the bike are also pretty comprehensive.
We also got a chance to check out the features of the motorcycle, and they are quite useful. For me, the best part was the map mirroring feature. So it shows Google Maps directions and the ETA. So basically mirrors the Google Maps on the screen over here, and that's very helpful. We used it for half of the session today, and it was working very, very well. So as long as there's network, you can use the Google Maps and travel. And the best part is if you lose connection and once your phone comes back into an area with network, it will reset once again to the point where you are and continues. You don't need to pair the phone again and try and mirror it. So that is again a great feature. After spending a short time with the TVS Apache RTX, one thing is clear. They definitely have a big challenger in this segment. If you look at the styling, the ergos, the engine performance, the ability of this motorcycle to sit comfortably at speeds of say 60 to 80 kilometers per hour. If you look at the features, they have packed everything into this motorcycle, and the best part is the pricing. It's
Starting at rupees 1.99 lakh and going up to rupees 2.29 lakh, the RTX comes across as great value for money. While I'm yet to test out its touring capabilities, which we will when we test the bike back home, I think the RTX should be very capable at that, going by what we've experienced. On the whole, the TVS Apache RTX is an impressive motorcycle and a great bike for beginners stepping into the world of adventure touring.